Hey, this is HistoryNet and Mr.Brass at our third attempt at a live stream. And here we have a special guest that we've been wanting to talk to for a long time now. Friended forever, Mr. Porch Atheist himself. How are you?
Oh my God. That's hilarious. I don't really like that term much because I feel like it's vaguely racist and I don't like racists.
That's kind of the point.
Yeah. This
Well, I
I
mean,
don't
I always found that funny because like basically, having atheists like for the past 10 years been saying, atheism is just a lack of belief, and then all of a sudden, oh, you don't hate religious people, now you're a porch atheist. I didn't know there was more qualifiers to being an atheist.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yeah. And also just so I looked that term up on Urban Dictionary and technically they're all porch atheists according to what the term is. They're saying that the term is on Urban Dictionary is someone who like lectures you from their porch. And that's what they're doing. They're totally lecturing you from the porch. I'm not doing that. So I technically I'm not the porch atheist. The only way that they can say I'm the porch atheist is if they mean the racist term, which is comes from like porch monkey or porch n-word, which is the black person that sits on the porch, I guess on the porch lecturing you. So, but I'm not I'm not lecturing either way. So
Or they're doing it from their basement, either or.
yeah.
My audience should already be acquainted with you by now, but tell them what exactly your intentions are and what led you to do what it is that you do. Like, what exactly made you decide to counter anti-theist propaganda and be pro-religion in these times where people are basically losing their souls?
Well, I felt like we were in a unique opportunity where we have the scientific know-how to kind of validate ancient wisdom. And I feel like there is a lot that religion has to offer. I think there's a evolutionary perspective for looking at religion, and we're at a time when we can really sort out what is the good stuff and what, maybe isn't as important. So that perspective really got me into kind of studying religion from this scientific perspective. And I just constantly, when I interacted with atheists or really militant atheists or anti-theists, I felt like they really just had a one note assessment. And also they're kind of making a political argument. And the when you're making a political argument or a moral argument or an ethical argument, you're really not using science. You're just kind of using your intuition. And it really bugged me because I felt like they were being super hypocritical when they're standing under the banner of science. They're basically basing their ethic on the fact that science can give us all of these great things. But yet they just throw science under the bus where it conflicts with this idea that religion is a terrible blight on society and is harmful. So it's a real contradictory position that they have. And I guess it triggers me. It really does trigger me because it's like, come on. I consider myself to be pro science more than anything. Like, I don't consider myself to be pro religion. I consider myself to be pro science, and where science can validate the whatever religion has working for society, then I'm pro science because those things are in unison. I hear a little noise in the background. I don't know if that's you or
It's his girl.
she's I don't know what she's doing.
She's not here. Let's see. Hear anything now?
No. You muted it, but so
right.
does that make sense? Is that
Yeah.
I mean,
like,
they want to pin me as pro-religion because they're anti-religion and they just want to say that you're an enemy. And I'm like, no, I'm pro-science. You're pro-science, but they don't want me to be pro-science and them to be pro-science because they want to distance me as much as possible from.
They're not really pro-science as so much as paying lip service to it.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, nobody here is denying that religion is a double-edged sword, but anti-theists who make it their mission in life to get rid of religion always manage to paint it in such a glass half empty way, as if it's a net negative for society. Like, you're an atheist who knows better than that. Just so many of my atheist viewers understand that you are not like a crypto Christian apologist posing as an atheist. What made
No.
you an atheist in the first place, and how sure are you that there is no higher power?
Well, I think the science stuff really did make me an atheist. Just my curiosity about science kind of pushed me down that path. And I don't think that there's any good evidence for God. I honestly think that the evidence for the kind of God, the Christian God, is really non-existent, but it's almost I can't I can't conceive of a world where that kind of God actually exists. I do a lot of the theists have kind of taken the simulation theory, because a lot of atheists are banding about this idea of the simulation theory, that we live in like a matrix type universe, and they're
Yeah.
saying, like, if that's true, if we live in a matrix type universe, then there is something, some other entity that actually created our simulation. And they think that this is kind of the atheist version of religion, which I guess it could be. But I mean, I look at the simulation theory from a very scientific perspective. And the idea, like, if it's true that we live in this matrix like simulation that was created by another entity, like, I don't know if they're human or a robot or an alien, or I don't even know what you would necessarily call them. But the idea that the universe was created with a purpose in mind, because I don't know why you would create a simulation. If you're an entity, like, obviously as human beings, we're going to create these kind of simulations, and we
Yeah.
even create simulations for different reasons. I mean, there's The Sims, which is a popular game. The idea that the universe was created with the purpose in mind, the that the religious perspective or the theist perspective or the Christian perspective or Muslim perspective, whatever perspective you want, that just doesn't make any kind of sense to me. And it's kind of interesting to think, well, if the universe was created to serve a purpose, what is that purpose? The idea that there's this benevolent God. I mean, they kind of gloss over it in Christianity. I grew up Christian, so
Yeah.
I mean, I was always under the impression that God created the universe for companionship. God created mankind for companionship. I thought that was settled, but I've talked to a few people in the context of this simulation theory thing, and they have differing views on why the Christian God created us. Were you raised Christian, perhaps, or?
Yeah. Like my mother is a Christian. My dad's a deist.
Okay. So what is your take on why the universe was created?
It's just that I guess God was bored. I guess.
Okay.
Like
Well,
one,
yeah, that's pretty much the deistic perspective.
like
Right.
being alone in the universe, just with other extensions of yourself. Like, why not create other lesser versions of you?
Well, if you're talking about this stuff in terms of simulation theory, it really depends upon how labor intensive our simulation was for this other entity to create. Because if, like, the old, they created it because they were bored thing, that stacks up if it wasn't very difficult for them to create. But I don't know. Like, you look at the particle accelerators that they've created, man, those things take 10, 20 years to build. Like, they cost so much money to build. I don't think you would build a particle accelerator because you were bored. Like, you build it because you want to know something.
Yeah, and my sister is very devout Christian, but she also doesn't really like religion in the
Mhm.
broad sense of the word, like how it's been misused throughout the ages and stuff like that.
Oh, really?
I'm the same way.
Yeah.
Like I like
Well, yeah. Well, but yeah, my oldest sister is. She's not just a Christian. She's one of those end time fundamentalist Christians.
Hmm.
Where, she really does believe that the world is coming to a head, is going to end in about a year or two.
Really?
yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
My,
just like how every other Christian has been thinking for about 2,000 years.
Do
yeah,
you talk?
my sister's not like that. She's not fundamentalist either, and she thinks young Earth creationists are out of their fucking minds. Like along with Mormons and Anyway, what were you gonna say?
Well, the apocalyptic sets I don't really dig. That stuff
Mm,
kind of bugs me because it does make people kind of check out of life a bit.
yeah.
Well,
Like,
I mean, we do have Donald Trump as president. If there was any time that we were going to be in an apocalypse, it would probably be right about now.
Mm,
if the end times ever do come, it's not likely to happen anytime soon, like many generations ahead of our time. But anyway, like I mean, if religion really is a net negative in the world as anti-theists like to propagate, then why is it still ingrained in culture? Like,
yes.
like I could
That
never stand bullies, but that goes for both sides. Well, while I have no love for the hyper evangelical fundamentalists who are holier than thou, fire and brimstone, I find the new atheist slash anti-theist to be just as odious and reprehensible, if not more so, at most times. Like there are exceptions, like our mutual friend Shannon Q and Theomaki, who I'm friends with, but 98% of them are just ugh. Much of
you know
them were always atheists their whole lives, but most of them will tell you they come from backwards fundagelical households without a proper upbringing and education in the first place. So it's pretty much noticeable that those who claim to have been devout as believers have projected their evangelical drive and fundamentalist psychology onto their newfound atheism and thereby become bigoted towards the idea of God and vilifying him to no end.
Yeah, I agree. The the they have kind of a zealotry about them that they probably have. So my understanding and my thinking there is that so if you're a devout Christian, you have a lot of zealotry as a Christian, and then you feel that you've been
Lied to.
jilted. Yeah, you've been lied to. You're going to feel the most jilted because you're the one that put the most effort in to the belief system. So me being I mean I don't I was kind of really I did have a lot of zealotry when I was a Christian though. So I break that mold because I didn't take that zealotry into my atheism. I see other people who are zealous atheists, but I guess like I read one of Richard Dawkins' book, The God Delusion was one of the first atheist books that I read. Yeah. Have you read it? I mean, it's fascinating stuff.
I
Well,
mean, yeah, I have, and yeah, the history and the philosophy, no.
Mhm. Yeah, I didn't know much about that stuff when I read it, but the thing that I kept sifting for was that basic equation of is religion a net negative or a net positive? And Dawkins just kind of asserts that it's a net negative without really presenting any evidence. And it really offended my sensibilities since Dawkins is a biologist. And just the thing that you learn in biology, square one, is that if some feature is a persistent feature of the environment, then it's most likely an evolutionary adaptation, like it's serving some function. And religion is just, it's everywhere, it's ever present. So I don't know how you could say that there's this feature of the environment that you find everywhere, yet it's this feature that would just kill everyone off. It's like saying that yes, there's this like people like to drink strychnine. Like they love drinking strychnine. It's one of their favorite things to do. Yet it hasn't killed them off yet. It's like there's something wrong with this hypothesis. If religion is like strychnine and people love drinking it, yet they're still around. Like either strychnine is not a poison or you got to redo the math there.
I mean, religion is a double-edged sword. Like nobody's denying that. But
Right. Yes.
what
Yeah.
what irks me is about the Dawkins and the other new atheists that they mostly attack strawmans of the religions and then propagate that and to people who are already weak in their faith and like, oh, that's what I'm going through. Just
Yeah.
play on their emotions like that.
Well, there's the gay thing, and I do realize that. I mean, you listen to Ben Shapiro, that stuff really. Well, it bugs me because I think religion has something to offer people in the form of meaning. But if you're gay and religion is anti-gay, then you can't take advantage of that. And I think that builds resentment in society. I think it builds resentment in young people. I don't know how you get around that because, I mean, you talk to religious people and there are religious people that are they're anti-gay. They really are anti-gay.
Yeah, and there's also atheists that are anti-gay, and nobody seems to virtue signal about that.
Yeah, I don't know the anti-gay atheists, but
I know one.
Yeah.
His name is Charlie Checkham.
Yeah.
He's a rapper, also atheist, who he made an entire album going after gay people.
Interesting.
Like there's not very many public atheist homophobes, but they exist in real life a lot.
Well, I mean, you have to consider like I think like 75% of atheists in America are liberals.
Yeah.
So that would kind of go in there.
But anyway, Friended, you are indeed controversial on the interwebs. On one hand, you have a lot of fans, believers, agnostics, and mature atheists alike, and also a lot of haters, mostly just anti-religious fanatics, whatever their opinions are worth, right? It's quite obvious you're a Jordan Peterson fanboy. Tell us more about that.
So Jordan Peterson is an interesting character for me. And I've heard people say that I am in a Jordan Peterson cult. Now I would like, you've set me up perfectly to challenge that a bit, because I honestly believe that it's the other people, the Jordan Peterson haters, that are in the Jordan Peterson cult.
Yeah, like there aren't any Hitchens cults, Harris cults, Aaron Ra cults, Dillahunty cults.
Well, I think that cult to me just means that you have a irrational position on a particular person or idea. The reason why I say the people who are against Jordan Peterson are in the cult is because they're the ones with the consistent position. Like it's a straw man of my position to say that I just love everything that Jordan Peterson does, because that's not true. I've been critical of Jordan Peterson in a number of different areas. So where I agree with Jordan Peterson, I agree with him. Where I disagree with him, I disagree with him. But the people who generally hate Jordan Peterson for no rational reason whatsoever. They hate everything about him. Like anything that he gets right, they tend to turn into a straw man so they can be against that too. And that seems much more like cult-like behavior. I mean, do you agree than just being for him where he's right?
Yeah, but like it seems whenever the new atheists are threatened by public intellectuals like Jordan, or when their champions like Harris are losing their audience to him, they start to collectively target them, thereby gaining thousands of subscribers in the process. Although all they ever manage to do is strawman the shit out of them, and their impressionable audience buys it. Like as if a bunch of pseudo-intellectual kids on YouTube are able to refute such a brilliant guy like Jordan Peterson. I just find that hilarious.
Yeah. You wanted to say something, Brass?
Oh yeah. I just wanted to say that, like, it was just funny about, I think with Jordan Peterson, it's like, it must be the Kermit voice that really urged him off.
No, I like the Kermit voice.
That's funny.
Kermit the Frog.
Yeah, they use that Kermit voice thing as if Jordan Peterson isn't in on the joke, as if Jordan Peterson doesn't know that everyone thinks he sounds like Kermit.
He knows.
Yeah, he's totally in on it and thinks it's funny. Like you're not insulting him. I mean, I don't know. The guy must make like $1 million a month now. I don't know how you could insult that guy. Or I mean, what he's doing is just fascinating to me. I started doing YouTube because I was a huge Height fan, and I was very much in the liberal bubble. and Haidt kind of red pilled me from that liberal bubble. And once I got a better understanding of politics and religion, it just, it, my science side realized so many people were getting it wrong that I really wanted to share that information. But Haidt, I don't think is as charismatic as Jordan Peterson. And so when I made the connection that really Jordan Peterson is talking about the same kind of things as Haidt is talking about, and the way everyone is triggered by him and completely strawmans his arguments is like fits into the whole Haidt perspective of the world, that we see things the way that we want to see them. So it became like the perfect thing for me to do videos about, because I was forwarding Haidt's message, and this guy Jordan Peterson, just people couldn't get enough of him. So just making the connection between what Jordan Peterson was saying and Haidt's research, which I feel backs up Jordan Peterson. Like a lot of my videos were really just, so I was super into Jonathan Haidt, and I was super into uh Leonard Sachs, who wrote the book Why Gender Matters. He's wrote a bunch of books on why gender matters, boys adrift, girls adrift. Like he's very much talking about the same things Jordan Peterson was talking about, like how boys are being left behind, how schooling is really becoming this kind of indoctrination. Sachs was talking about those same things, and I had become familiar with Sachs's work and Haidt's work long before Jordan Peterson ever came along. And then these people on the left just were straw manning Jordan Peterson. And I figured, well, I can make videos where Jordan Peterson says something, and then I provide the scientific evidence from Haidt or from Sachs that backs those claims up, because they're on the left just saying those claims are just bogus, or he's pulling them out of his butt or whatever. I'm like, no, he's not. He's like, he's basing his claims on established science. And the fact that you guys don't know this is really, I mean, especially if you're on the atheist side who's claiming to, stand under the banner of science. So that's where I started making my Jordan Peterson videos, and those videos became very popular. I don't know if you saw the interview I did with Leonard Sachs, because like it amazed me to find out that Leonard Sachs is just not, he's kind of fallen for the left-wing narrative of Jordan Peterson as this, almost Nazi-esque conservative, which is, it's laughable. It's completely laughable. It's the ultimate straw man of Jordan Peterson and his positions, his outlook. But I mean,
yeah, and it's hilarious when you respond to people like Rationality Rules and Genetically Modified Skeptic trademark make response videos to Jordan Peterson. You make response videos to them.
Yes. Yeah, I know. I got, okay, here. Hold on one second here. Sorry about that. So they were giving Rationality Rules was making response videos to Jordan Peterson, and he made 6 or 7 of them. Like he was just cranking them out. But everyone was giving me a hard time because I was responding to all his videos. I don't understand. It's like he's allowed to make 7 Jordan Peterson videos, but I'm not allowed to make 7 videos responding to him.
Right.
Like I'm obsessed with him, right? But he's not obsessed with Jordan Peterson.
It's double standards.
Yeah, it's a complete double standard.
And they say he said that you fillet Jordan Peterson as if he doesn't fillet Harris.
Oh my God. Yeah, totally. Yeah, totally. The thing is though, I've put out lots of videos that are critical of Jordan Peterson. So it's just, that's a straw man of my position. Like I talked to Leonard Sachs about the brain bifurcation thing that Jordan Peterson is always talking about, that I don't think matches up to the science. But
is there anything positive you can say about Rationality Rules or Genetically Modified or Mr. Atheist or any of them?
I wish that I could, but my interactions with Rationality Rules, I'm convinced that he knows that he treated me unfairly, and that he's just fine with that. Like he knows that he's smearing me. He knows that he's smearing me dishonestly, but he's fine with that. Like he doesn't care about correcting the record because I'm a smaller YouTuber, and he like beating up on. Go ahead.
He actually called you a troll, a self-admitted troll, even though you were joking about trolling other videos.
Right. And I've had several interactions with Shannon Q to try to get her to tell him, because she was the tweet that he used in his video that was completely dishonest. And Shannon even admitted that it was completely dishonest and told Rationality Rules in the comment section that it was completely dishonest. But if I had done that, this is where my character is. Like if I had done that, if I had character assassinated someone in the same way that he had done to me, I would take down the video, or I would at least like pin a comment saying that this part is not true, that this is incorrect. But he will not do any of that stuff, which says to me, you're a fucking liar. You're a total liar.
Like if he and Genetically Modified ever talk to you, you can all pretty much just settle this out.
Yeah, but they won't do it. I am their arch villain, which is just, this is why I don't want to interact with any of those people, because they're dishonest actors. They're propagandists. I mean, I don't know how a better way to put it. Like they have a financial interest in maintaining this lie. And that's, how is that not corruption? How is that not, I mean, it's the same. You would say if a politician was doing the same thing, lying for money, what would you call that? I would call it corruption.
Right.
I'd call it apologetics.
Yeah.
Like what I also find funny is that anti-theists, a lot of the time nowadays, join neo-pagans and ganging up on Christians. Like anti-theists are so desperate that they're willing to work with pagans just to take a jab at the big bad Christians.
Yeah. Huh. I don't know much about pagans, so
You find them a lot on Twitter nowadays, but
like Ocean.
Yeah, the Ocean's cool sometimes, but like
Ben Shapiro caps on paganism in his new book. I didn't like Ben Shapiro's new book a lot, so I was trying to get a retweet out of him, but like before I mentioned that I didn't like him, I put some notes together to do a video on what I didn't like and what I liked about the book, but I never did the video. So
I mean, what I've always found funny about with Ben Shapiro is like, since I'm a regular person on Atheist Republic, they had this little thing where they said, "What's your opinion on Ben Shapiro?" And most of them were, since most atheists are liberals, they completely just trashed him in the comments.
Yeah.
And they said all this stuff like, you know, he's just this big anti-gay bigot. I said, you do realize his position on gay is like he just wants gay marriage to just be like, he wants to privatize marriage and get government out of it. So I mean, and what's funny is like that's the exact same position that gay people had in the 1970s in the original Pride March. So if anything, he's being on their side with it.
They want his stamp of approval, and he's not willing to give it, and I don't think they should force him into giving it. Like, you're big boys. Like if you want to live your life that way, and Ben Shapiro, you don't need Ben Shapiro's stamp of approval to live your life that way. And that's his attitude, which I think that's completely okay. They're just, I mean, a lot of people are just as bigoted against Christians. They would say that religious people are bigoted against them and they're just being bigoted defensively. But I think both positions, I mean, you just got to drop the bigotry. Like Christians say, hate the sin, not the sinner. So they're saying they hate the behavior, not the actual person. And the gay people are saying the same exact thing. They're saying we don't hate the Christians, we just hate their ideology, which is effectively the same thing.
Yeah.
They're saying we hate your identity as a Christian. And they're saying, well, we hate your identity as gay people, but we love you as people.
But you're not allowed to hate their identity.
Yeah, I'm just like, come on, guys, you're doing the exact same thing.
Like, doesn't it kind of depress you that these anti-theists, like, incidentally, the SJW anti-theist channels are getting a subscriber boom as of late? It's kind of like the flat earther channels. It's as if people want to be uncultured and just buy whatever crap a bunch of pseudo-intellectuals are feeding them, no matter if they're new atheists, SJWs, flat earthers. And then they project that onto Peterson, who they love to compare to Deepak Chopra and them.
Yeah, that's not a good comparison. It is kind of the unintelligent leading the unintelligent. I don't know. Sorry, I cut you off.
What do you feel about that?
Well, can you ask the question again? They're comparing him to Deepak Chopra. How do I feel about that?
Like they compare like I was comparing like as if people want to be uncultured and buy whatever bunch of pseudo intellectuals are feeding them. Like the new atheists, SJW, flat earthers, feminist stuff like that, and they project that onto Peterson.
I'm sorry. Reed popped up in the chat, and I was thinking about his comment, so I wasn't paying attention again. Say it one more time. I'm sorry. I'm going to pay attention this time.
Never mind. What do you want to ask?
Well, no, Reed in the chat made a comment where he said ideologies are mutable, sexual preference is immutable, which I completely agree with.
Yeah.
So,
but here's what's funny about ideologies. I actually did an entire video on this. Is that ideology was originally came up with by an agnostic, and during the Enlightenment. And the entire thing was made to be a versus to theology. It was supposed to be better than theology. And it was something that atheists of the time just loved. They called themselves the ideologues. It wasn't until Marx later on, made negative connotations about ideologies and conflated it to religion that we sort of have our understanding of that today. So it's been a completely secular process with ideologies.
But he's making the argument that whatever the ideology is, that ideology is changeable, and that sexual preference is not changeable, that it's a biological, which I agree with. But I mean, I think you're predisposed to certain ideologies for biological reasons. Like if you are biologically more pessimistic, you might be drawn more towards Marxism, because Marxism has a kind of pessimistic outlook to it, that the world is oppressors and the oppressed is kind of a pessimistic outlook. And I think that pessimistic component is somewhat biological. But Ben Shapiro has an interesting argument. I don't know that I necessarily agree with it, but Ben Shapiro would say something like, well, there are, just like sexual preference is immutable, so is a lot of things that are bad for you. Like a man wanting to impregnate 100 women and leave them high and dry is also something that tends to be immutable. But like religion is designed to push us away from those behaviors that are not necessarily the best for us in the long run.
Yeah.
So, well, I mean, yeah, it's another thing is that when it comes to a lot of I actually did it in a video, is about how conservative mating, it's called conservative mating strategies. And religion sort of exists to propagate that. And you notice that even in places where it's completely atheistic, like China, they have the same sort of conservative mating strategies there that they implement. And they both tend to be anti-gay people, although the Chinese are anti-gay for a different reason.
Really?
Yeah. They're anti-gay because of the fact that, social Darwinism. Basically, they're against gay people because they don't feel like they're not conducive to a society, to the right society. So that was the reason why they are anti-gay on that part. But yeah, like they actually did an article, and they said, what's the worst place to live at if you're gay? The worst place, like you would think the worst place would be like some like Saudi Arabia or something like that. No, it was China.
I didn't know that.
I mean, well, yeah. Also, speaking of that, I noticed you did a video on. I mean, you not didn't really do a video, but you mirrored it really, where it was about a mother of a trans person who was talking about how hard it was on her to see her daughter going through the transition, the
Yeah.
trans phase.
Yeah.
What made you get into that topic?
Well, I worry that we're creating false positives where kids think that they're trans when they really don't suffer from gender dysphoria, and that we're sending them down the wrong path. I mean, the trans activist community will have this idea that a large percentage of the population is trans, and they're just being suppressed because our cultural norms are anti or transphobic, they would say. And that once we remove this transphobia, a lot more people will be trans because they are inherently trans. And I don't necessarily believe that. I think that they're creating a cultural status for being trans, and people who would not normally be trans, we've kind of created an environment where they think it's cool to be trans, so they transition. But once they go a little ways down that road, they realize that they're making a mistake. I think it's hugely, I mean, I don't see how you get more marginalized than a person who's been convinced that they're that they have gender dysphoria when they don't really have gender dysphoria. And I don't know how many people a year we're creating in the current social political environment. And I feel horrible for those people. I mean, if it's 5,000 kids or 10,000 kids, or, I mean, the trans stats are up, I think, year over year by like thousands of percent. I think Leonard Sachs in the interview said it was something like 2,500%. Yeah. So I worry about those. I worry about those kids. And I mean, that's the liberal part of me, that just the bleeding heart liberal, who I'm worried more for those kids. And I don't see why. I guess the progressives are saying, well, there's nothing wrong with being trans, so don't worry about those kids because they'll just be trans and that'll be fine. But
Yeah, then there's Desmond.
yeah. Oh yeah, well, I don't think Desmond is technically trans. I think he's just
No, drag queen, like kind of being dragged into that, like brought into that.
Yeah. Sexualizing children is just repugnant. So
well, that's modern society for you.
Yeah. Ugh.
Anyway. I remember in another discussion that you did where you actually brought up a good point where you said you noticed a double standard there, where if politics, separates a family and makes them like, not distance themselves from their kids, we never say
Brass, you're a little low.
Oh. I said whenever politics separates a family and makes families tear them apart, we don't say get rid of politics, but when religion does it, we say get rid of religion. Do you think that there's any more double standards outside of that?
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. It's funny that they do fixate on religion and they blame the religion and don't blame the politics when it's it's from the same source, the just root tribalism. People have shifted from being religious tribalists, which we've all acknowledged that between group conflict is a problem. You've said several times that the religion is a double-edged sword. Like it is going to unite people, but it tends to unite people against other people. So we have to find social workarounds to prevent that, which thankfully in America, I think we have found plenty of social workarounds. I think one of the brilliant things about America is the separation of church and state, the idea that we can have multiple religious ethics peacefully cohabitating was really something brand new. Like the idea that you had to have a state religion and that state religion would unify people was the old social norm. And the new social norm with America was, okay, we can have these different religious ethics peacefully cohabitating. And out of that, you get the birth of basically new religions, new ethics. And sometimes those ethics can be better. They can be better for society. Just the idea that, like the inclusion and exclusion of slavery, I mean, taking slavery out of all ethics was just a huge social innovation that freed up so much economic growth.
Yeah, that's another thing they'll virtue signal about the Bible condoning slavery and Christians in the South during the antebellum being slavers. Then I ask them what excuse atheist slave owners have, and they never come up with a satisfactory.
That's funny. That's funny. Yeah. The Christians were the ones that they used the Bible to be against slavery as well.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, but don't tell them that.
Well, the Sam Harris would say that religion just had such a grip on society that religious people were on all sides of a debate. So, but you can't argue that religion both condones slavery and opposes slavery
Like
at the same time.
Like which do you think would ally with what Jesus taught and the apostles?
No slavery. Well, I don't know because I'm not a theologist, and I really haven't studied a lot of the religion. Like one of the things,
But
I
you
like
read
to
the Bible, though, right?
yeah, hit or miss. I mean, I think when I was more religious, I made an attempt to read the entire Bible, and my eyes just glazed over on so much of it that I don't know that it really meant anything to me.
Well,
Yeah,
yeah, especially if you get into Leviticus and stuff like
Mhm.
that, like it's very boring.
just a bunch of purity laws, and in Exodus and Numbers, there's sections of building the tabernacle and stuff like that. It's a bunch of blueprints.
This is another thing that kind of bothers me or triggers me about the militant atheist is they get in these debates with religious people, and their whole debate strategy is to point out contradictions in the biblical text. They want to say this can't be the inerrant word of God because there's so many contradictions, which is, I mean, it's fine, but their argument is based around tearing down religion, which is just the easiest thing in the world to do. It's not, I mean, pointing out where religion got it right and finding empirical evidence to support that. Now that's a tall order. It's like, but that's so much more useful in society to find out where doing something for certain empirical reasons is correct is so much more useful and satisfying.
Yeah.
And you had that debate with Godless Engineer where we're going into it where did you think that was like I know it was advertised as a one-on-one, but when you got in there, it was like it was basically a 3-on-1 in there, and it was like multiple people against you on the chat server, which I mean, did you find that to be a little dishonest? Because I think you're just going in there for a discussion and you just didn't get it.
Well, they definitely did me dirty. Like, I regret having anything to do with them. I should have never done that debate. I'm thinking I'm not going to do any more debates for that reason, just because I'm not convinced that they're actually productive. I watched the debate with Sargon of Akkad and Destiny and Hassan. I can't remember the other guy's name, but that debate, I don't know that debate. I mean, it was totally entertaining. It was completely entertaining. Like, I was on the edge of my seat, but I don't know. I mean, if I'm going into a debate that I'm just going to entertain, that's fine. But I don't know that just entertaining is really my brand. Like, I like
Just
to
scout the audience. Make
what's
sure.
that?
Just scout the audience.
Yeah.
Find out what kind of audience people have. Like, also when that non sequitur show had Tim O'Neill in there, like Kyle and Steve love Tim. Like, you've heard of him, right? The guy
I
who
don't
wrote
know.
the History for Atheists. Like,
Oh,
he debunks the bad history that new atheists propagate. Like, Jesus never existed, Hitler was a Christian in the Dark Ages, and Christians burned the Library of Alexandria and stuff like that.
right.
Anyway, they love him on there, but the majority of their audience are mythicists who don't believe Jesus walked the earth. And he tries to, he was explaining how we know for a fact that there was a historical Jesus, and they just dogpiled, and most of them just dogpiled him.
Wow.
Brass saw that also.
Well, yeah, and yeah, another thing is like I found interesting in one of your videos was how you went like I believe it was on Mr. Atheist.
Your mic went out again.
Brass, you're low.
All right, this better?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. I remember I think it was with Mr. Atheist you did the video on where you pointed out how the reason why religious people do not trust atheists as much is because of the fact that there's a sense of moral there's a moral problem with it. Where
It's accountability, actually.
yeah. Oh, well, I mean, that's more or less like I was saying. I think the notion of ultimate justice is what sort of makes it harder for religious people like Christians to go for atheist.
Right.
Because, like, like, even atheists will admit this, really, that, like, really, all you really need in life to really get ahead is simply to either have enough money where you can just simply buy your way out of problems, be powerful enough where anyone that confronts you, you can just have them swatted away, or just be intelligent and just outsmart everybody. And when we know about that in life, I think religious people who do believe in this, you get this afterlife and where you're divinely judged, I think that has a benefit to it.
I agree. Yeah, it's accountability. It's complete accountability. And when an atheist says, "No, I don't accept any of that accountability," it's difficult for people to trust them. They want people to trust him just because, without reason. It's actually kind of irrational to trust somebody without good reason, right?
They frown
Well,
upon
yeah.
the hyper evangelical religious people who tell you to believe without question, yet they want you to believe what they say without question.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I should actually, I have to go soon. So we've been talking for about an hour and a half, I think. Did you have any closing questions or anything?
Let's see the live chat if there are any questions.
I've had eyes on it. What's up, Reed? Reed's one of my buds. I talked to Reed when I started doing Jordan Peterson videos, and I actually asked him, I'm like, do you think, I told him, I basically said, I feel like Jordan Peterson moves the needle on height. I moves the needle on Height's ideas in the right direction, even if he's an imperfect messenger. Like, he's the messenger we got. So, and Reed, I mean, as I remember, Reed pretty much agreed with me. So even though Reed is definitely one of my critics, but I mean, I have a lot of respect for Reed. So Reed's definitely a Height guy. Reed is a much more militant. I don't want to say he's like militant. Reed is so far from militant. Reed is more of an theist, though. I think a good characterization of his position would be that he believes that we can build a secular religion that is just as effective as religion itself, and I'm not convinced that that's the case. So that is our
Well, Stalin
disagreement.
believed the same thing, really. So yeah.
Yeah, I think you can run into problems like that. I just think God is the idea that we're going to farm out our security and monitoring to this invisible third party, like the efficiency is so massive there. And if all the psychology is already built to accept that that premise, like if we're biologically predisposed to believe in God, and there's only a certain amount of people that are the atheists, the people that don't take the programming, but those people can never reach a critical mass. I mean, you have to worry about those people getting into power because of the Stalin thing. Like you point out, if the atheists gain power, terrible things can happen.
That's another thing. They will deny to the death that atheism had anything to do with communism, even though it's historical fact. Like, there's
Yeah.
the Bolsheviks literally call themselves the militant atheists, the militant godless.
Well, I think there's also some parallels in the French Revolution where
Absolutely.
the French embraced reason and over any kind of religious ethic, and that ran into trouble too. So I think it's not just, I think there are other examples where, and I think a lot of it comes down to if people don't feel accountable. Like if they don't, like if the leader doesn't worry about, I'm killing all these people, what's going to happen to me in the next life? That's just, it's an accountability that you just can't. I don't know how you replace that accountability with some kind of secular ethic. I mean, I myself, a lot of people say, listen, Adam, you're an atheist, you have no accountability. I don't necessarily think that that's true, because I was such a zealot Christian when I was younger, and I feel like I reflexively live by that ethic. It's the same exact thing that Jordan Peterson talks about when he says, I live as though God is real. I live as though this is real, because I do.
Yeah.
I can't sleep at night if I screw people over. I don't feel right about it. But there are, I mean, we talked a little bit about that rationality rules thing. Like he has no problem sleeping at night knowing he screwed me over. So
Anyway, yeah, we should do this again sometime.
yeah, no, thanks for inviting me on. I may just make a video and point people to it so you can get the views on your channel. So, but I'll try to post something on my channel.
Cool. Anyway, you got any closing questions or statements, Brass?
No, I think I got most of it out. Yeah, I had a pretty good time doing this.
Yeah.
I know me and Friend have gone back and forth on Twitter a couple times. So
Hey, you're not
yeah, I think
voting. What's happened? When are you going to register to vote, Brass?
I only really voted the last time.
Oh, really?
Because I voted the last time, like for when it was Hillary versus Trump.
Uh-huh.
I really only did that because I had promised, like when it was the last election before that, that I said whatever happens, I would vote again, because I was saying I would vote because I didn't vote then. And so yeah, on my I see Hillary and Trump. I said, oh my God, I have to vote, but this had to be the worst time I could vote.
I literally just flipped a coin because our country's going to hell anyway. But anyway, John Buck in the chat, he's another fan of yours. You've probably talked to him before on Craig's channel. He says, ask him which type of people he'd be most interested in talking with in the future. That's you.
I mean, this has been great. I think I don't know, people want the fireworks. I did a bunch of vegan debates, and
oh my God.
I mean, I did the vegan debates for the same reason, that I wanted to impart some of the knowledge of moral psychology. The vegans are talking about moral psychology, but they're not talking about it explicitly. So I brought that into the vegan debates, and I felt like those debates were kind of fireworks, but over something that, like, I don't really have a dog in the vegan fight.
I love meat.
Yeah, I do too.
Like you ever had a flat iron steak? Animals are meant to be.
No,
Animals are meant to taste good.
I agree with you, but if there was some kind of scientific workaround, like if they could really just make a steak, then if we didn't have to torture animals, that would be great. So
Just do it
Yeah,
plain.
but here's the thing, if you don't torture the animal, it just doesn't taste the same.
yeah,
You have to. I always joke with vegan, like the very dogmatic vegans. I joke with them, and I'll just say, whenever I go to a restaurant, and I make sure to tell them that make sure to give me the veal make sure to give me veal, but the cow had to be killed by the man it loved the
yeah,
most.
huh?
With extra blood.
Yeah,
But I
just
didn't.
to mess with them.
The only reason why I brought the vegans up was I didn't feel the vegans were dishonest with me, and I do feel that the anti-theists are dishonest. I do feel like they're dishonest. I do.
Oh,
I mean, I feel like they've completely they've smeared me for no good. Like it's vicious. Like I never walked away from the vegans. Like I'm friends with all those guys still. Like
we got one last question. Ulterior motive. What did you think of the Glenn Laurie vid with the Baltimore Community Center? Whatever that was.
well, I didn't watch it. I was gonna actually. I have a bunch of stuff to do today, and I was gonna put it on while I'm doing that stuff. So,
All right.
I don't know. I don't know. Are you the one that sent it to me on Twitter? If so, thank you. I retweeted it. It looks completely interesting though. But Kuhn also asked if I think talking to the anti-theists is pointless. And I'm really debating that. I'm really debating whether or not that is the case. I mean, I'm kind of mulling that over.
I mean, correcting them is worth it to some extent, so people watching know who's full of shit and who's actually telling the truth.
Yeah, but I don't actually have to interact with them. And I have put out consistent videos saying this is the argument that you need to attack. And I'm a little disappointed because in the anti-theist debates, none of the theists ever take up any of my arguments. So so if the theists aren't going to take up the arguments, then what is really the point?
Well, I do. I point to you a lot of the times.
Okay, that's good. That's good. Yeah. I have seen some interactions, like I mirrored that one interaction with the guy. I apologize, I can't remember his name, but he confronted Shannon Q about Jordan Peterson, and he was using my arguments, which I thought was good. So, but the anti-theists are going to continue to make these arguments that are just baseless, which that's what bugs me. And until you confront them on it, like the argument that secular nations are the best nations to live in.
That's total bull.
Yeah,
Like
they're the best.
those countries were already well off before they became.
Well,
Yeah,
I mean,
they have
they call them
a ton of money.
secular, but have you ever noticed that most of them have a state church still?
They might as well say that rich countries are the best countries to live in. Like, yeah, like, yeah, okay, basically. Wow, that's rocket science. Really? Rich countries are better to live in than poor countries? I would have never known.
But yeah, we should. Yeah, your fans are clamoring for more response videos, by the way. But yeah, we should do this again sometime.
What do they want? What videos should I make?
I don't know, response videos to other like big name atheist YouTubers that are trying to be big named and getting subscriber booms and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
Aaron Raw would be. I think you've done a little chat with Aaron Raw. Maybe you could do one of his videos.
Yeah, maybe I will, because I have a good enough rapport with Aaron Raw that I could keep it nice. Like that's another thing that really bugs me is that they perpetuated this narrative that I am dishonest, which it's like point to anywhere where I've been dishonest. Like citation needed. Where am I being dishonest? Like it's
like Aaron Ra and Dillahunty, and then they're when they get big enough, they stop caring about research and all that, and they have fans that will defend them no matter what they say or how many debates they lose.
Michael Jones just mopped the floor with Matt Dillahunty.
Oh yeah, inspiring philosophy.
Yeah, he just took, and the Matt Dillahunty continually want. It's a great debate. Everyone should look it up. Matt Dillahunty versus Inspiring Philosophy. I believe it's on Non Sequitur Show. I think that's the first thing I ever saw on Non Sequitur Show. I'd
Inspiring
asked
philosophy actually brought the data, and Dillahunty just argued with his feelings, and his followers just declared victory for him anyway. Like, IP is so arrogant.
Yeah, that's what was amazing about that debate is Dillahunty was playing the theist. He came in there with a religious argument, and his religious argument was just blind assertions without any kind of evidence whatsoever. And the debate was over the secular utility of religion, which I think Inspiring Philosophy is on firm ground. I disagree with Michael on lots of things because he dives into the meta ethics and stuff like that, where I think he doesn't have a leg to stand on. He makes a great argument, and the guy is way smarter than me. But in that debate, Dillahunty kept wanting to drag it into the realm of just the feelings and assertions. And Michael Jones kept saying, but I don't understand. What is your evidence for this? We have to go where the evidence leads us. And I'm like, oh my God.
And literally his best argument was that mothers were traumatized by seeing their aborted fetus having funeral services.
I know. It was so awesome.
I mean, and doesn't he realize that like being pro or anti-abortion is a secular sort of thing? There are plenty of atheists on both sides of that, so it's not even something you can go to religious people with.
Yeah. The secular utility of religion, that debate though, the anti-theists cannot reference science in that debate because all of the science is against them. So they're forced into the theist position, where the theist position is you really just they don't have the evidence on their side. So yeah.
Oh yeah, John Buck also says we're all still waiting on his promised talk with David Sloan Wilson.
Yeah, I haven't hit David Sloan Wilson up. David Sloan Wilson is on a book tour. And I'll be honest with you, I don't know that David Sloan Wilson wants to do the talk because I think that David Sloan Wilson is very much on the progressive side. And I mean, there was an interaction. David Sloan Wilson put a blog post on the website that he runs. I think it's like Evonomics, or it's one of those evolution-based websites. And the woman was obviously a intersectional feminist, and she did some major straw manning of Jordan Peterson. And some of the hardcore anti-theists, I mean, way anti-theists, just savaged her. And I mean, I think that she's wrong on the science. But David Sloan, she's a friend of David Sloan Wilson's, and David Sloan Wilson backed her. And I mean, I think David Sloan Wilson might be feeling me out. Like I could probably get Jonathan Haidt to do a talk with me. I just don't know how popular those talks are going to be. And I don't know that I could add anything more to the conversation. Although David Sloan Wilson did a talk with Robert Sapolsky, who is another very famous biologist. And David Sloan Wilson told this story that is an amazing story about E.O. Wilson and this conference where E.O. Wilson came out on the side of multi-level selection, which was a huge turn in the evolution debate, and totally was like knifing Richard Dawkins in the back, because Richard Dawkins' whole legacy is tied up in this gene level selection thing.
Yeah, selfish gene. Yeah.
Yeah. So this story that David Sloan Wilson told was just phenomenal. And the audio in that video is just so abhorrent. I was like, well, maybe I should do the talk with David Sloan Wilson just to get him to tell that story again with decent audio and editing. So maybe I will reach out to him and twist his arm to do a talk with me. But The whole thing is these talks take a lot of time, and that Aaron Raw one, like I spent so much time preparing for that and so much time editing it, and just everyone freaking hated me for it. And I was like, why am I even bothering doing this?
Because he's got legions of like NPC minion automatons.
But there's automatons on our side too, because they want to just see me pwn Aaron Raw. They don't want to see us have a constructive conversation. Like
Aaron Raw doesn't pawn anybody. He spent so much time, spent like 20 years going after the low hanging fruit among
Aaron Raw
religious.
pwns a lot of people. Like
Yeah, he does.
Yeah,
because
that's
but
his brand.
he spends so much time going after pounding the low hanging fruit to the
Right.
to the
Yes.
ground that he can't debate any intellectuals who challenge his position.
I'm not
very
gonna
wrong, right? Like when he tried to debate apologists, RC apologists, who's not even a creationist. He just kept bitching and moaning the whole time and talking over him.
Yeah.
He is. You can tell he's emotionally invested in this anti-theist shit.
We need to win over someone on. We need another Michael Jones is what we need.
Yeah.
Like I want to see Michael Jones only argue from an atheist perspective, because he's so fucking smart. And
him and JMD apologetics did a mock debate on like JMD would play the part of the typical village atheist, and inspiring philosophy was like, you're just taking this part way too seriously. It's annoying.
Well, you got to send me a link to that, because that sounds fascinating. I mean, we really want to see him. The thing that where I think the anti-theists have really mischaracterized Jordan Peterson, and a little bit on the theist side as well, where they've really where they haven't understood why Jordan Peterson has this appeal. Jordan Peterson is talking in a way that both sides of the argument can relate to. Like Jordan Peterson doesn't say anything that is outside of the materialist rationalist framework. Like I've listened to a lot of Jordan Peterson, and I listened to that guy Paul Vanderklay. I listened to some of his videos, and I love Paul Vanderklay to death, but he's constantly saying stuff that is outside of the materialist rationalist perspective. And every time he does that, it just irks me. Like I think, okay, well, you're just making assertions here. Like that's just blind assertions that you're making, which is fine. I mean, I'm cool with that, but it just doesn't interest me. Like he starts losing my interest. Like he talks a lot about C.S. Lewis, and I've tried to read C.S. Lewis's books, but I just don't find C.S. Lewis arguments compelling because they're outside of the materialist framework. Now, Jordan Peterson would never make an argument that doesn't function on both levels, which is basically what I'm talking about when I say that the scientific method or empiricism can prove ancient wisdom. So he's saying something that is ancient wisdom. So the religious people immediately go, yeah, I know about that. Like that's biblical. That's the wisdom that I've been taught. I can relate to that. And the scientist types say, yes, he's backing that religious wisdom up with evidence. Yeah, your nose is like,
yeah.
What happened? You fell off your skateboard?
Long story.
He's using, I don't know if the camera's just on me or on him, but he was like, he's using the camera as a mirror. It was kind of funny. He's got some huge scar on his nose. Like he got in a fight with a skateboard and lost. So, but it was a brawl. What happened?
Kicked my ass. No.
You got your ass kicked, really?
No. Just making a joke that the skateboard kicked my ass.
Oh.
No, I woke up with an itching spell one morning, and it just kept scratching and scratching and scratching, and just it got all chapped the next day, and just started scab picking, and just it's
don't do that.
It'd be more interesting if I was actually in a fight.
So there's another question in the chat. Ask Adam if he minds being the rational materialist in that's back pocket. I don't. maybe the theist back pocket, is he
Theist
saying? Oh
back
yeah,
pocket,
the theist back pocket. I mean, I think it's a good role for me. I don't just strategically, I don't know. It's like Michael Jones can go into a debate with Aaron Raw and they can pitch it as theist versus atheist. And if
He
Michael,
would bury Arama alive.
yeah, totally. But where Michael Jones is best is when he stays in the rationalist materialist framework because he's playing on their field. And when you can womp them on their own field, it just like you've won over the atheists because the atheists are going, wait a second, he's playing on our field. Like what Aaron Raw does in a debate is he goes on to the theist field because he's familiar with all the biblical stuff. I think he might have even been a preacher at one time.
No. Aaron Raw was a Mormon.
Okay, so but
And he's used to young Earth creationist arguments. He's never really delved into any sophisticated classical theism or anything like that.
But he does know when they start talking about contradictions in the Bible, you're playing on the theist turf. You are.
Yeah.
You really are. When you're talking about the secular utility of religion, you're playing on the atheist turf.
Like he doesn't understand why there are contradictions in the Bible and is not aware of the ancient Near Eastern historical context or educated in any of that in history in general.
Right. The anti-theists, though, are smuggling in a premise when they debate. They're smuggling in the premise that there is no secular utility to religion. That's the root of their argument. So when you debate them on the secular utility of religion, they're in a much more compromised position because that is what their entire ethic is based on. So if you can dismantle that, you've effectively destroyed them. So,
Yeah.
but when you're arguing, when you're debating on the contradictions in the Bible, you're not even close to destroying them.
Right.
Because you're not attacking the root of their ethic.
It just means that the biblical writers had their own perspectives on things.
Yeah.
And he'll say that they'll all say that they were written by superstitious, primitive, Bronze Age goat herders, even though the biblical texts were written in the Iron Age and post-Iron, and were written by scribes and scholars and philosophers, not sheep herders.
Funny.
And I mean, for one, it demonizes sheep herders. I mean, you do realize a lot of smart people were farmers, right?
Yeah,
And did that stuff.
And I asked them, please demonstrate how you're smarter than a goat herder.
Yeah. There's different levels of intelligence too. That's another thing that I don't like, that they mischaracterize religious people as unintelligent when it's so far from true. Like Isaac Newton was a big time Christian. Isaac Newton,
Mr. Atheist did a video on that.
Isaac Newton said he said one of his biggest accomplishments was dying a virgin. Like, how crazy is that? That's crazy.
Like him, Galileo, and Kepler, and Copernicus, and them. Like 98% of the pioneers of modern science were theists, Christians, or Muslims of some sort. And like they'll say, well, that's thanks to the culture of the day. They didn't have any other choice. Then I'm like, okay, so how did Christianity hold back science again?
Well, supposedly Michelangelo was a very famous atheist. Who? Michelangelo?
No, he was a Christian.
Yeah, I studied art. There's a huge controversy over that. Like a lot of people believe Michelangelo was a secret atheist. You could not be openly atheist. Like he couldn't.
Yeah, he was so atheist that he was spent years painting the Sistine Chapel.
Yes, that is true. You've seen the creation of Adam, right?
Yeah, that's where they get the idea of the invisible man in the sky, even though God doesn't look anything remotely human.
But the creation of Adam is
it's a masterpiece.
Right. So if you look at the creation of Adam, God is positioned inside what looks like a human brain. And the title can be taken either way. It can be God or Adam is the creation of Adam by God, or God is the creation of Adam. That painting is titled The Creation of Adam. So
Yeah.
he's saying the painting, if you look at it, he's like Adam could easily be pointing to the brain where God is, where God was created. You can look at that painting from a very atheist perspective, and that's one of the reasons. There are other things like Michelangelo depicted himself in the. There's a self-portrait of him in the hand of Jesus when Jesus comes back as the conqueror. Jesus has like a ripped like skin, like he's filleted somebody in one hand, like he's just totally hellraisered him, like
I don't
ripped
know.
his skin off.
I think a better case for a Renaissance atheist would have been Machiavelli,
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, I agree there.
but not entirely. He was a believer of some sort, but
Right. But the only reason that I bring it up, we kind of got sidetracked, but the they want the argument that the militant atheists are saying is that there was no way that you could be an atheist back then. That's why Isaac Newton was not an atheist. They want to say
no.
that.
Newton made it clear that he thought atheists were fucking morons.
Yeah, exactly. That, and I'm saying that you could be, you had to be a secret atheist back then, but
Yeah,
you
and
could
if
be a
there were
secret
no
atheist.
and if there were no non-believers or skeptics back then why was there a need for Thomas Aquinas to articulate the arguments for the existence of God?
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, I mean, here's the thing. It's funny is like even at the universities in the Middle Ages, they discussed God's existence all the time. So, and they brought up, the typical arguments for and against, and they were trying to articulate it. So it's not like they were completely against this idea.
Yeah.
And I also find it funny is like, because atheists tend to have this perspective and they say, well, we're finally just pushing back because religion has gone unchallenged for thousands of years. And I said, you do realize Christians and Muslims have been criticizing each other's religions and they've been criticizing their own religion for thousands of years as well.
Yeah. And ever since the American experiment happened, I mean, out of America came, well, out of America came both Jehovah's Witnesses and Mormons, correct? I'm
Yeah.
fuzzy on the Jehovah's Witness history, but I know the Mormon history because just I've had so many friends that were Mormons. So I mean, if you're living in an environment where believers can leave at will and start their own religion, then that is effectively a check on religion because they're like, yeah, we don't like the way you're doing things. We're going to do our own thing over here. And that's happened like twice.
Yeah. Anyway, yeah, we should talk to you next time.
Yeah, let's cut it off. We've been trying to quit for like 45 minutes now. So
yeah.
Thanks for the questions, guys. Thanks for inviting me on. This was a lot of fun. So, and always, I'm on Twitter if anyone wants to give me ideas. So I do like the community. So yeah. Thanks.
Anyway, this is HistoryNet's third attempt at a live stream. This is Mr. Brass and Friended, who we may or may not talk to next time, preferably, yeah. So, yeah, good day.